One day, a couple, Nick and Daria, ventured into a secluded forest area. They stumbled upon a hot spring and decided to bathe together. After sharing an intimate moment, they hurriedly prepared to leave the place. Suddenly, Nick was struck by an arrow, shot by a grotesque man known as Three Fingers. In a terrifying turn of events, both Nick and Daria met their gruesome end, killed by Three Fingers and his two equally vicious brothers. Meanwhile, the story shifts to Danny, a young man who, along with his friends, sets out to visit a remote resort. Danny, who was adopted, recently learned about his biological family, who had summoned him to inherit the family-owned Hot Springs Resort. Although Danny was nervous about meeting relatives he had never known, he pressed forward with his girlfriend Tony and their group of friends. When they arrived at Hot Springs, the grand yet ancient resort greeted them. They were met by Jackson and Sally, Danny's cousins, who were the caretakers of the resort. Despite being surprised by the number of guests Danny brought, Jackson and Sally welcomed them inside, showing them to the many available rooms. As they settled in, Brian, one of Danny's friends, suggested that they focus on transferring the property's ownership and sell the resort quickly. However, Danny had become attached to the resort and convinced his friends to stay a little longer. Most of the group agreed, except for Brian and his girlfriend, who reluctantly went along with the majority. As they explored the resort, they encountered Agnes, an elderly guest who hadn't yet checked out. She playfully flirted with the muscular Jackson before suddenly meeting a violent end. A flying axe embedded itself in her body. Jackson, however, barely reacted, only reminding those around him not to cause too much trouble. The friends continued enjoying their time at the resort. During a grocery store visit, Brian and his girlfriend spotted posters of missing people, including Agnes, raising their concerns. Back at the resort, Vic, one of Danny's friends, teased him about his family's strange photos, pointing out that many relatives appeared to have physical and mental disabilities. Jackson, overhearing this, was furious. Danny quickly diffused the situation by explaining that Vic was only joking. Soon after, Jackson invited Danny to the family's weapon room, explaining their history as hunters. Curious, Danny accepted Jackson's invitation to go hunting in the nearby mountains. As they hiked through the woods, Jackson expressed his suspicion toward Tony and the rest of Danny's friends, suggesting they were only interested in his newfound wealth. Danny shared his past struggles, including how his friends had supported him through tough times, despite his office going bankrupt. Jackson warned him to stay cautious, but Danny remained loyal to his friends. Back at the resort, Brian shared his concerns about the missing people with Tony. Suspicious, Tony asked Vic to follow up on Danny's whereabouts. Meanwhile, Danny shot a deer during the hunting trip, impressing Jackson with his skill. At the same time, Three Fingers shot a local sheriff who had come to investigate Hot Springs, proving the family's deadly proficiency with archery. Later, Dick stumbled upon one of the cannibalistic brothers devouring the deer Danny had killed. Horrified, Vic ran back and collided with Danny, accidentally triggering a trap that severely injured him. Back at the resort, Sally treated Danny's wounds. Taking advantage of the situation, she seduced him. But just as things were escalating, Tony arrived, and the affair was cut short. As night fell, the group continued their carefree fun, swimming and relaxing, as if they had nothing to worry about. The next morning, Danny gathered his friends and revealed his plan to manage and expand the resort. Brian objected, pointing out that Danny had no experience running such a business. Still, Danny's determination forced his friends to reluctantly agree. Later, Brian discovered that his girlfriend had been stealing valuable trinkets from the resort. Initially upset, he quickly joined her in the scheme, planning to sell the stolen items at an auction. While exploring the resort, Brian and his girlfriend stumbled upon a hidden altar, likely used for strange rituals. Excited by their discovery, they decided to enjoy the moment, only to be caught off guard by Three Fingers and his brothers. The horrifying trio brutally murdered the couple, continuing their reign of terror. Brian and his girlfriend faced a gruesome end when they were attacked. Brian was struck down and killed, while his girlfriend was brutally tortured, her body broken and her split. Just moments later, Sally entered the scene, stopping Three Fingers and his brothers from continuing their brutal assault. She scolded them and ordered them to leave. After they left, Sally cruelly decided to toy with Brian during his final moments. But before she could, Jackson intervened, telling her to hold off for now. He hinted that she could have her fun with Danny later that evening, which made Sally excited. In the end, she smothered Brian to death. Meanwhile, Danny and Tony were in the middle of a heated argument. Tony was growing increasingly disappointed, noticing how Danny had started changing, refusing to listen to her or his old friends. Instead, he was siding with his new family, people he had only just met. Frustrated, Danny walked away from Tony, leaving her to comfort her younger brother, who was nearby. At the same time, Vic began to grow suspicious. He noticed that Brian and his girlfriend's suitcases were strangely hidden in a closet. His concern grew when he overheard a conversation between Danny and his cousins. It seemed that they were planning something, a family reunion later that night. Driven by curiosity, Vic decided to follow them. Deep in the forest, Danny finally met his extended family. Many of them were physically and mentally deformed, which shocked him. Sally explained to Danny that their family had three distinct castes: the Creightons, the Boggles, and the Hylers. Danny, along with Jackson and Sally, belonged to the Hylers, the highest caste, praised for their perfect appearance and physique. Jackson handed Danny a family drink, and after consuming it, Danny became drunk and easily manipulated. His cousins then revealed their true intentions. Danny, as a Hyler, was expected to continue the family bloodline by having a child with Sally. In his intoxicated state, Danny went along with their twisted plan and began a relationship with his own cousin. Meanwhile, Vic was caught spawning by one of the family members and killed in front of the others. The family members then drank his blood and ate his flesh. Danny, now fully immersed in the family's rituals, unknowingly participated in the gruesome feast, completely unaware that they were consuming his friend's remains. The next day, Danny's remaining friends realized something was terribly wrong. They urged him to leave the resort with them, but Danny, still under the family's influence, refused and instead fell asleep. Tony, growing more desperate, began searching for her friends along with two others. In their search, they stumbled upon Jackson processing human flesh. Their fear escalated when they found Brian's severed head stored in the cooling room. Panicked, they planned to escape, but their presence was discovered by Three Fingers and his brothers. In an attempt to save Tony, her brother Charlie sacrificed himself by holding off the three monstrous brothers. He met a horrific death when his stomach exploded from a high-pressure pump. On the run, Tony wanted to go back to save Danny, but this separated her from her brother. Tragically, her brother was caught in a bear trap and hacked to death by Three Fingers and his gang. Armed with a shotgun, Tony confronted Sally, who revealed everything she had done. Despite managing to wound Sally by shooting her in the face and leg, Danny arrived and prevented Tony from killing his cousin. Jackson soon joined the fight and tried to kill Tony, but Danny intervened, separating them. He begged Tony to leave, but Jackson couldn't accept this and continued to pursue her. In the end, Tony managed to kill Jackson with a small knife. Furious at the death of his highest caste cousin, Danny turned against his girlfriend. The story reached its tragic conclusion when Tony was killed, her head sliced open by Three Fingers. Some time passed, and Danny had fully embraced his role as the head of the family. Now in charge of Hob Springs, he celebrated by inviting guests to a grand buffet, ironically naming it Tony's Restaurant. Horrifyingly, the meat served at the feast was made from Tony's body. During the banquet, Danny invited Three Fingers and the rest of his siblings to join him at the family's ritual altar. There, Sally waited in the disfigured state, her face scarred and her leg amputated. In the center of the altar, Danny and Sally continued the family's disturbing tradition, with Danny now fully committed to producing a pure-blood heir from Sally. And the movie? If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our other recaps and subscribe for more content, and leave comment below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.